Alright guys, welcome back to another episode here at Canton Lounge, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how to use Cantonese transcripts to learn Cantonese. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things, like why you should consider using transcripts to study Cantonese, how to use transcripts to study them Cantonese, and some other uses of transcripts that you can use, repurpose them for. Okay. Well, let's dive straight in. And I've actually prepared like a sample for you guys to follow along, so this should be kind of exciting. Anyway, let's get started. So, first thing I want to broach, I don't know, excuse me. So, why would you want to study Cantonese transcripts? Well, I guess the better question to ask would be, why transcripts instead of other Cantonese materials? Well, if you do a comparison, and I've done that in a separate post I've written on Cantonese transcripts of other Cantonese learning products out there in the market today, you'll see that there are generally three main reasons, I guess, of using transcripts over these other materials. Number one, okay, these Cantonese transcripts, well, transcripts of Cantonese, should be based on authentic, real-life materials. So most of the materials that you see in the market, they are tailored to the lower end of learners. So they're pretty much designed for beginners. Okay, maybe if you're lucky, you might get some stuff that's for intermediate learners, but not a lot. But most of these materials, they are whittled down versions, okay, of Cantonese, and it's not really the type of Cantonese that you'd hear on a daily basis. Okay. These transcripts are based on real, authentic materials. Number two, these transcripts, they cover a large spectrum of topics, ideally, right? And so you're not really just stuck with, things like weather and food and greetings and all that. These are the typical things that you'd encounter in these courses. And those are things that are very situational, right? It's very survival type Cantonese. But what I think, if you're watching this, you probably want to take your Cantonese up to a higher level. You want to be able to talk, It could still be situational, it could still be everyday things, but you might want to be able to say more than, I want pork chop with rice and an iced lemon tea. Maybe you want to do something a little bit more. You might want to comment on the taste. Or if you're doing travel, you might want to talk about your travels and talk about your feelings and things like that, right? And so this, having that access to native materials gives you a really large spectrum of topics to work with. And number three, there's pretty much no restriction when it comes to the learning level, okay? And so what that means is everything in the market, pretty much for learning Cantonese in particular, but this is also true for other languages. They're designed, okay, for strictly beginners. And it's pretty rare to find anything for intermediate learners. And pretty much it's impossible to find anything for advanced learners. But I guess at that level, you don't really need any whittled down versions anymore of the language. You can just go directly to native materials, right? But what if, think about this, we can directly access native materials after getting through the beginner stage? But it might have explanations and scaffolds to help us navigate through that material. Well, with these transcripts, that's what they are. And there are no restrictions on learning level, types of materials. People always complain that there are no Cantonese materials. That's not true. There's a wealth of resources when it comes to learning Cantonese. It's just that they're very native. And so if you can get access to some of these transcripts or similar learning resources, then you can get access to a huge wealth of resources. All right, so the second question that might be in play here would be, who should study transcripts? So who is this for? As you can probably tell from my rhetoric just there, this is really for an intermediate level of learners. So let's have a look at this diagram. This is what I conceptualize to the learning journey from start to finish to be when it comes to learning Cantonese or any other language. Like for a typical language learner, right? You could easily, okay, compress the intermediate stage and spend more time in the advanced stage. It's perfectly fine. But I think that this would be, a really good progression because all of this time that you're spending in the intermediate stage, it's going to build a really good set of fundamentals for you when you move on to a more advanced stage. All right, so studying with transcripts isn't really for you if you're still, learning the ropes, right? You're learning pronunciation, basic constructs, and you're still building your basic vocabulary. Then you might want to do those things instead, because this might be a little bit out of reach for you right now. But if you're already kind of advanced, you can read, for example, newspaper articles, you can read sections of books, magazines, and you can understand a lot without too much strain, then this might not be for you either, because this is transcripts you can use them still to expand your vocabulary, certainly, but you could probably use reading to, you could read authentic materials a lot quicker to the same end. Right, so if you're at an intermediate stage, you're really good with the basics, okay? In other words, you know how to read some Chinese characters, you're kind of comfortable with using and understanding basic constructs, and you have a basic vocabulary, then this is for you, okay? Learning with transcripts. All right, so what should a transcript lesson look like in terms of design, right? So ideally, it should have these components. Well, it should have some sort of a vocabulary list, to hone in on the important words that are unfamiliar. What's even better is if that vocabulary list has some sort of excuse me, I can't speak English today. If that vocabulary list has some sort of an audio companion, so you can kind of follow along, listening to how each word is pronounced, and also it should have perhaps a separation between the important words and the non-essential ones. So things that are very esoteric should be left out, right? We just want to focus on the most important words. All right, so obviously there should be a Cantonese transcript in characters. There should be an English translation that is written in fairly good English, right? So or any other language that you know or are your native languages. And it shouldn't be literal. It should actually be a semantic translation from the Cantonese transcript. Okay, so it should make sense in English, not in Cantonese. And there should be a Jyutping transcript or any other romanization system you prefer. And there should be some sort of a listening exercise to help you reinforce your listening skills and those new words you just learned. And perhaps some sort of a comprehension exercise to make sure that you really understand the text in terms of listening and in terms of reading it. So having a set of maybe questions or something like that can help with that. Okay. So ideally, okay, this is what I refer to as the language circle. You can probably guess. LRSW, listening, reading, speaking, writing, and GV, grammar, vocabulary. Ideally, the transcript really should touch on all four and the two core areas of language learning. But if not, it should definitely touch on, at the very least, listening and reading. And you should use it to expand your vocabulary and identify new grammar constructs, right? Okay, so that's that. So next, I want to talk a little bit about what kind of materials you should study. Okay, because when it comes to native materials, there are many different types of things you can work with, right? So these are seven types, categories of materials that I recommend studying. Okay, especially the starred ones. The non-starred ones, not too important. The starred ones are my preferred and recommended materials to study. Number 1, documentaries. Number 2, cartoons or dubbed anime, dubbed in Cantonese, obviously. Number 3, interviews. Number 4, dramas. Number 5, news. Number 6, YouTubers. And number 7, films. And the reason I put documentaries right at the very top is I feel that it's really an ideal format of studying Cantonese, because you get like a more formal kind of a presentation by the narrator, and you get like a variety of speakers in the clips when they do interviews and all that. And so it makes it, and also if you pay attention, documentaries, generally speakers, they speak very clearly, right? And that's very important. If you can't listen to what people are saying, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. Because the main bulk of the skill, referring back to the language circle here, right? Studying these transcripts, the main kind of components that we want to focus on is listening. It is mainly a listening exercise as well as a vocabulary building exercise. So if you can't listen, right, then it stands to reason, it's not that useful. So documentaries are ideal for that. And cartoons or dubbed anime they're really good as well because they're kind of like simplified versions of dramas and films. Dramas and films are a little bit too difficult. They use a lot of colloquial language. There are cultural references, omissions, and things like puns, double entendre. It makes the comprehension component to be, it makes it very difficult, right? So I recommend staying away from dramas and films in the beginning. But you can certainly move on to them as you get more advanced. So cartoons and anime, they're great. And interviews, for the same reasons as documentaries. So what about YouTubers, right? A lot of people really like listening to YouTubers. Well, the fact of the matter is that YouTubers don't actually talk in a way that's too difficult to understand. It depends, right, on what they're talking about. And the YouTubers that I'm talking about right now would be the lifestyle type, the cultural type YouTubers who talk about, lifestyle. And once you kind of listen to them enough times, they talk about the same thing over and over again. And so I feel that the value of listening to YouTubers isn't as great as if you listen to documentaries or interviews and things like that. So this is how I would order in terms of prioritizing these materials. Okay, moving on. So how do we study a transcript? So I've outlined a 10-step process, and I'm actually going to show you with a transcript and a sample video of how I would study a transcript if I were a student, okay? So let's dive straight in. Just to be clear, okay, you can get a lot of benefits even if you go up to just do half, up to step 6 of this 10-step process. But if you want to maximize the benefits you can get from the process, I would highly recommend that you stick through the entire process, okay? All right, so step 1, you want to study the vocabulary and listen to the recording if available. So the objective here is to kind of give yourself an idea of what the lesson is going to be about, so you can navigate it a little smoother, while you're going through the lesson. So let's have a look at how you do that. All right, so we're back. So this is a lesson that we're going to be using today that I prepared beforehand, and vocabulary, right? So what you want to do is just to go down the list, okay, and have a preview of what you're going to be looking. And if there are audio samples of each word available, that's great. If not, that's fine as well. So you just want to kind of follow through and try to sound it out yourself to give yourself an impression, and have a look at the words as well to see what this topic is going to be about. Okay, so for example, I might go 發展商, so real estate developer. So this has to be something to do with real estate. 大型, large scale. Okay. 蚊型戶 doesn't sound that like a very important word. Sounds very esoteric, but just to go through it. Tiny size, 顯示 to indicate, and so on and so forth. You just want to prowl through the vocab list. Okay. So just have a look through until you're done, and read any notes, I guess, they're available. Oops. Scroll too far. Okay. So moving on. Step 2. You want to listen to the clip once without stopping and without the transcript. And the reason for doing that is you want to practice your listening skills to see just how much you can understand, how well you can kind of put together clues. Because remember, you're watching the clip, okay, you're not listening to something. Combine what you see on screen, use those visual cues. You don't have to handicap yourself by kind of blindfolding it. No, it's not necessary. Just try to understand as much as possible, okay? So let's see, where is my clip? Okay, there you go. Alright, so you kind of continue going. So you can see that it's it's showing a clip of an apartment. It's talking about houses, apartments. Those are words you should probably know at this stage, and you want to piece together, what they're talking about. So perhaps there are a lot of words that the narrator is saying that you don't understand. That's fine. Once they get to the interviews, it should be a lot easier to understand. Okay, and you just want to pay attention to that. So let me just fast forward and clip to where that is.
地方就好淺窄嘅啫，我習慣瞓大床嘅，咁所以其實係好緊要嘅。雖然你話係細嘅單位，但係都可以有一張即係4尺半嘅床。咁我覺得。
So at this point you might hear things like bed, 4.5.
覺得已經係好開心啦。
好開心, very happy. It shows a lady in her presumably apartment, and shows it filming the bed and all that. So it must be talking about an apartment, bed, space, and things like that. So you can kind of piece together things, even if you don't understand all the words individually. Okay. So you just want to do that without consulting the transcript. All right, so moving back to the presentation. All right, so that is that. So once you're done with that, step 3, you want to study the transcript now. Now, try to do this without consulting the translation. Okay, you want to do this because you want to practice your comprehension skills, your reading comprehension skills, see how much you understand without the help of the translation, right? Let me just flip over to where that is. I think we have there we go. So this is the transcript. This is a characters-only transcript, as you can see. Let's try to read through it and see how much you can understand. I mean, you can read through characters if you're familiar and if you're comfortable with that. If you're not, you can still go through the Jyutping version. It's perfectly fine. The idea is just to read through some version of it, okay, whether it be the romanization or the characters. Okay, so I want to have a look and see how much you understand, right? So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. And it might take a little effort, but I think it's well worth the effort. Because if you just look at the translation, then it's not really your own attempt to understand it. But this, you're really understanding. Even if you don't understand a lot, that's fine, right? You just want to see how much you do and see what kind of gaps that you can fill in. All right, so moving back to the presentation. Step 4, you want to study the transcript again, and this time consulting the translation if necessary. So you want to get a fuller understanding of the material. You want to be able to identify grammar constructs that are new, that you might not have known before, and you want to understand, so why does this Cantonese phrase or word translate to this particular, or translate this particular way in English? Okay. So I'm going to flip through the other transcript. This is one that's labeled with Jyutping and with English translations. So for example, you might go through it and see, so see that the words here, they're blue words. These are the new vocab words. The red words are function words. They're related to some grammar, or they're just very important words that appear all over and over again in Cantonese. So you can see 香港人越住越細. So Hong Kongers are living in smaller and smaller places. So you might not know what yut and yut means, but you can probably deduce this corresponds to this, right? And so you choose that has to be the more, smaller and smaller. Right? Okay, so you learned something new. Or maybe you already knew it, who knows. And you continue. 而家連賣幾百萬嘅新樓都出現劏房潮. So you see the ge construct, so this is the way of forming relative clauses, you remember. So this is what it's describing, and this is what's describing it. Right? So 新樓, 樓, apartment, buildings. 幾百萬, couple million. Mai is to sell. So that must mean buildings that are worth millions, right? So you can make that kind of an equivalency. Lin, that's you might have known that before, you might not have known that before. And looking at the translation, it has to mean even. Okay, so you can kind of work through that transcript and make those establish those equivalencies between the Cantonese version and the English translation. Okay, and this exercise is really good to help go back and forth between English and Cantonese and learn and establish new words that way through your own effort, right, and not just looking at translation. Moving on, so after you've done that, Step 5, you want to watch the clip again. This time slowly, you want to match what you hear and read. The reason you want to do that is you just want to practice your listening skills. Not listening comprehension per se, but just your listening skills. By associating the sounds you hear in the clip to the romanization, the tones, and the Chinese words, obviously. I'm just going to pause this and come back with the quick demo of this. All right, so we're back. So you might just want to set up your screen this way to have your transcript right next to your clip. And so let's have a look at how we would go through this for now. Okay, so I want to play the clip, and you want to just match what you hear, the words to what you hear, right? So this is a purely listening exercise, not comprehension.
地方就好淺窄嘅啫。我習慣瞓大床嘅，咁所以其實係好緊要嘅。雖然你話係細嘅單位，但係都可以有一張即係4尺半嘅床，咁我覺得已經係好開心咯。
So that kind of flew by, right? So if you feel that it's still difficult, you can kind of like go through it line by line to match what you hear to what you see. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on with the presentations. After you've done that, you want to watch the clip a third time, but this time you want to listen for comprehension, okay? Not for listening. The reason for doing that is you want to practice your listening comprehension skills by trying to understand the clip without translating back into English in your mind. So at this stage, you want to combine everything that you've done so far. So the vocab, the reading comprehension, the listening, and bring that all together and see how it all comes together with this in this bit. Okay. So you can still keep the transcript beside you. That's perfectly fine. You just want to listen. But this time, in your head, you want to understand it intuitively in Cantonese, not in terms of English. Okay, just let me focus on that. All right, so continuing.
呢個位於深水埗嘅216尺開放式單位，2013年。
So you might want to do something like simplifying your head so that long sentence just that it's you might hear 單位 apartment 深水埗 a place in Hong Kong. So we must be talking about an apartment in 深水埗.
推出嗰陣叫價300幾萬。
So you might not know what 推出叫價means, but you definitely know 2013年. That's the year 2013, right? 300幾萬 would be $3 million or around that price level. So it must be saying that the apartment that's in 深水埗has something to do with $3 million, right? So we want to kind of piece together what you do understand and try to fill in the gaps. And you can obviously do it in a more detailed way if you want to. You can just look back at the translations to fill in the gaps when you are having difficulty navigating through the clip. All right, so after you've done that, moving on, step 7, you want to fill in the blanks, okay, do that exercise. This time, you're going to go back and fill in focus, okay, on listening only. Just, again, associating what you hear and writing it down in terms of romanization and or the words, if you prefer that. So your objective is just to practice your listening skills and see how well you hone in on those new or important words. Okay, so let me just pause this and we can continue. All right, so we're back, and again, you might just want to keep this split screen view. Okay, you can just, I'm not sure if that's available, I guess. I think it's available in Windows as well. Anyway, so you want to play the clip again, and this time there are blanks, you can see, and you just want to fill that in here. And again, you're just listening, improving your ability to listen. You don't have to do any comprehension over here. So let's just move back to that portion of the clip, and let's continue.
咁我覺得已經係好開心啦。
Should go
都
back.
出現劏房潮，樓價高企不下。
There you go. That's the first blank. I might just take a piece of paper and write what you hear down. Right, that's what I do. And so you just want to go through the exercise.
發展商針對市民。
So there's 發展商. You just want to write. It's okay to write down just the Jyutping, okay, if you're still not comfortable with characters. But obviously you get that extra kick if you do work with characters. All right, moving on. So after you've done that, you want to go to step 8 and answer the short answer questions. And I would recommend that you write them down again. It can be Jyutping on characters, so it's not important. But you want to do this, first of all, you want to do the exercise to see how much you really understand. And second of all, to improve your skill, your expressive capability in Cantonese, and to improve that. Because if you write things down, it sticks a little better, and you can really see like how good you are in terms of being able to express yourself and see any problems that come up in the process. Right, so scrolling down to the short answers question section, and so there we go. So you can move through those. I'd recommend just like not looking at the translations or even the Jyutping, because at this point you kind of like know. You should be able to recognize these characters and understand them. They're not too difficult. They don't introduce any new things that aren't covered already. This is just a comprehension test. And after you've finished this, okay, you've written down your answers, you just want to go down and check your answers, right? And see how it matches. And just check for content. You know, this you can take this opportunity certainly to improve your expressive capability, but your main goal, objective here is just to make sure that your understanding of the clip is correct. So after you've done that, step 9, you want to move on to doing some vocab work. So you want to edit your vocabulary deck here and choose only words that you feel are important, right? And the reason you want to do this is to weed out the things that might be a little bit too esoteric. So those words are things you just want to be able to understand, but whether you recall them or not, that's not too important. But they're words that you definitely want to be able to remember for the long term and be able to use in real life. Okay. So you might have like an accompanying Quizlet deck, so something like this, or like an Anki deck. And you just want to be able to, I think you can export from Quizlet, right? There you go. And you can, in your preferred SRS software, or just if you want to use Quizlet directly, edit out the things that you don't necessarily want to remember, and keep the ones that you do. And you can use this software to really help you reinforce what you've learned. Okay. And obviously, at the end of the day, you want to, step 10, revise your vocabulary deck. Again, you can use Quizlet, you can use SRS software, it's completely your choice. And obviously, the objective here is to expand and consolidate new words and move these words to your permanent memory in the long term. Okay? So that is that. 10 steps to use a transcript and to maximize your use of it. Now, apart from this traditional way of studying with a transcript, you might want to use it and repurpose it a couple other ways. For example, I've listed 5 here, but you can probably do more. And just use your imagination, be creative here. Number 1, you can use the transcript for listening practice. So the objective here is to, you can do this for listening only or just for listening comprehension. The idea here is to get used to different speakers, voices and accents. Male, female, young, old, people in different professions, the narrator versus normal, like everyday Hong Konger style of speaking. And I think it's very useful to listen to the clip a couple times to reinforce those patterns. Number 2, you can use it for reading practice. And one of the main difficulties of learning Cantonese or any Chinese language is the characters. Okay? And so you want to use this opportunity to practice your reading and become more comfortable with reading characters in the process. Number 3, accent training. Here, you can really see, okay, these are, again, authentic clips of people speaking. So it's not contrived, it's not whittled down. You can listen and model after speakers in the clip to help improve your accent, your intonation, and your understanding, obviously. And you'll start to unconsciously be able to imitate these when you speak. And I think that pronunciation is an aspect that people tend to ignore beyond the initial stages, and this is a really good opportunity to revisit pronunciation after. Number 4, studying speech patterns. So in Cantonese, I think that you'll find speech to be a little bit irregular, and so that's something you want to pay attention to. And the second thing is that you want to listen and identify the intent behind a speaker. So what exactly are they trying to do? Are they saying something? Are they explaining something? Are they ascertaining what someone else says? Are they surprised, sad, happy? Are they repeating themselves for the sake of repeating themselves? Are they repeating because the other person didn't listen or couldn't hear them properly? Are they doubting themselves? Are they hesitating a little bit? Are they changing their minds? And so on and so forth. Okay, so you can definitely use that clip to do that. Number 5, you can use that clip to identify new structures just by reading the transcript. So the objective here is to identify the new structures in useful short phrases and to understand and maybe save them for future use. And I guess a very useful ability to develop, and I think that's essential, is to be able to differentiate between grammar structure or just a useful word versus, just your run-of-the-mill vocabulary. And because those are things that pop up over and over again, you need to know them. Those are the priorities when it comes to vocabulary learning, right? And that's about it for this presentation. I hope that was helpful, and I hope that at this point I have convinced you that Cantonese transcripts is the way to go moving forward. Again, let me just reiterate, I'm not here to bash any other materials. That's not the point. I think that they're very helpful to learn. But those are primarily targeted towards beginner learners. And I think that if you guys are here watching this, if you visited Canton Lounge, you probably want to take your Cantonese to a level beyond that. And I think that having transcripts is the way to go about it. And these are some ways to think about using the transcript. Okay. And as usual, if you have any questions and comments, they're very welcome. Just leave them below and I will get back to you. And that's it for today. Thank you once again so much for watching. I appreciate the viewership, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers.